So this man straight up fakes his own death just to cash out his life insurance money. His name's John Darwin, and all this guy wants to be is filthy rich, which, like, who doesn't? But instead of working hard like a normal person, this dude is out here chasing every ridiculous get rich quick scheme he can find. Like, for example, he once made his 2 sons go door to door selling random junk. And another time he was breeding exotic reptiles like African lizards, snakes, all that weird stuff. And when that failed, he started painting garden gnomes to sell. And I'm like, sir, these aren't exactly $1 million business ideas. So then he drags his wife Anne into all of this nonsense, convincing her that real estate is gonna be their golden ticket. But instead of actually learning how any of this works, he just starts buying house after house after house. And eventually they end up owning over 14 houses. Now, with all these properties, his mortgage payments every month are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, until John and Anne are drowning in over $1 million of debt and on the verge of complete bankruptcy. Look, I don't know a thing about real estate, but even I saw that coming. Now, instead of doing the obvious thing like filing for bankruptcy, John is like, nah, that's too embarrassing. Because John's brilliant idea to get out of the situation is to fake his own death. And he tells Anne, what if I just die in a canoe accident and you collect all the insurance money? And at first Anne's like, my guy, just file for bankruptcy, take the L and move on. And John basically tells her, look, I'd only have to vanish for a couple of weeks, and after that we can collect over $300,000. And according to Anne, she says that John pressured her into all of this, but I honestly feel like that's just a complete lie. Because I think once she heard about how much money she can collect, her eyes went cha-ching and she went right along with it. So one day in 2002, John drags his red canoe down to the sea. He paddles out for a bit, and then he stages this little scene to make it look like something went terribly wrong. Meanwhile, Anne is waiting on the other side to pick him up and drive home. And just like that, the con begins. She starts playing the grieving wife card perfectly, saying, oh my god, my husband's missing. And police obviously believed her, because why wouldn't they trust a seemingly devastated widow? Investigators launch this massive search party with helicopters, lifeboats, and dozens of people searching over 62 square miles of water. And eventually they find bits and pieces of John's canoe wreckage and a paddle floating in the water, but no John. And just like they planned, it really looked like a tragic accident. And after days of finding nothing, people just assumed that he must have drowned. But what confused everyone is that John was an experienced kayaker, and the water that day was calm as hell. But without a body, there's no way to prove anything other than the fact that he must have drowned. So about a year later, in 2003, John is officially declared dead, which means Anne can finally start collecting that insurance money payout. But here's what actually pissed me off. John and Anne had plotted this scheme so well that even their own sons didn't know about it. So you mean to tell me you made your own children mourn the loss of their father and let them believe he was gone for the next 5 years? The emotional damage they caused those kids is absolutely unforgivable. Now you're probably wondering, how did John stay hidden for so long without getting caught? So let me tell you. John and Anne owned the house right next to theirs because remember, they were real estate agents. The building shared a common wall, so they built a tiny passage that connected the 2 houses, and that's where John lived for the next 5 years. But eventually he gets bored out of his mind and decides he wants to get out. But obviously he can't just stroll into town as himself since he's supposed to be dead. So he develops this disguise: hat, coat, beard, and to really sell it, he gives himself a fake limp. But here's the thing, John isn't really Hollywood material, and his disguise is absolutely awful. It's like when Superman takes off his glasses, except somehow even less convincing. And one of the neighbors literally sees him and goes, aren't you supposed to be dead? And John just says, don't tell anybody, and runs off. And with all this pressure, they decide they need to flee the country, but there's one tiny problem. To leave, you need a passport, and John can't get one because, you know, he's dead. So he hatches part 2 of his plan, stealing an identity. So one random day, he just visits the local library in his terrible disguise, looking for records of dead people who were born around the same time he was. And eventually he finds the identity of a baby who had passed away just 5 weeks after it was born. His name was John Jones. So now we have John pretending to be John, which is really confusing because that's a lot of John. So he uses this unalive baby's identity to get a birth certificate, and now he plans to use this new identity to get a passport. But to apply for a passport in the UK, you need a signature from someone respectable like a doctor, a priest, or a librarian. So John befriends the local librarian. He hands her the birth certificate, gets the signature, and just walks away with a brand new passport. John and Anne decide to move to the US, specifically Panama City, Florida, because it looked like the perfect paradise for their new life. But this is where their little scam actually starts falling apart completely. After arriving, they start house hunting, and they found one that they really loved, and they bought it immediately. And that's when their realtor takes a picture of them and posts it onto their website to show their super happy clients, which seems totally normal, except this photo is about to destroy everything, but we'll get to that in a second. So after buying the house, they also wanted to buy a $270,000 ranch to convert it into a canoeing resort. And apparently they didn't learn from their previous failed businesses because they don't even have enough money to cover it. They kind of ran through their entire life insurance money already. So they decide that Anne will fly all the way back to the UK and sell all of their properties while John stays in Panama City living his fake dead man paradise life. But that's when he realized if they wanted to live in the US permanently, he would need an American visa. But to get that, he needs a letter from the UK police saying that he's a good citizen and has no criminal record, but obviously he can't do that because again, he's supposed to be dead. So John returns back to the UK and does something incredibly stupid. He walks into the police station and tells them, "I think I'm a missing person," claiming that he has no memory of the last 5 years and that he has amnesia. Am I the only one getting secondhand embarrassment from this? Meanwhile, Anne is over here putting on the performance of the year. She's jumping for joy while their sons are over here confused, but I mean, they're glad he's alive. But here's the thing, John did not return back to the UK just to give himself up. Oh no. He was hoping to trick police so that way he can get what he needed for his American visa. But what John didn't know is that police had already been secretly investigating Anne because her behavior after his passing had sent massive red flags. For starters, she was spending tons of money out of nowhere. She quit her job and suddenly moved to Panama. And employees at her old job said they would see her whispering like she was talking to somebody that she shouldn't be. Oh, and plus, multiple people had already seen John's crappy disguise and knew it was him, so the jig was basically already up. And then, maybe it was bad luck or karma, but a British journalist found the photos that John and Anne took with the realtor in Panama. And with that photo, there's nothing you could really say. They were already busted and their whole elaborate scheme just came crashing down. John gets arrested on December 7th of 2007 and gets sentenced to only 6 years and 3 months in prison. And then Anne gets arrested the next day, but she pleads not guilty, claiming that John forced her to do everything. But obviously nobody believes her because she is clearly just as involved, and she also gets 6 years in prison. Please do not be like these selfish idiots. Just go to therapy or file for bankruptcy instead of faking your own death. I love you guys. I will see you in my next video. Mwah, group hug.